Imagine you're a parent and your child has just started grade 1. You're excited, although a little scared, and you're thrilled for your child to become part of this new world of big school. Then one afternoon you open up your child's bag to take out their lunchbox and you find a folder that is labelled Mum, Dad, Notes. Now that doesn't seem so strange, does it? But what if you're a 2-mum or a 2-dad family? How does that feel for you? Do you feel like your family is seen? Understood? Do you feel like your family belongs? Imagine this. A child is in their prep year of school. They're proud to be part of a 2-mum family. In fact, they often boast to the other kids that they have 2 mums, and the other kids think that's pretty cool, right? Because they think mums are awesome. So imagine having 2 of them. Later in the year, a massive celebration is planned for all the kids across prep. Father's Day is approaching, and there are days and days of preparation for it in class. The school doesn't provide any options for children who don't have a dad or ask the family for their input, so the 2 mums try to work out how to approach the event themselves. They decide to bring a family friend along. When the celebration day arrives, every single kid is there with their dad. For the very first time, this child feels different and like they don't belong. A child in the early years of school is asked every single day by another kid, "Do you really have 2 mums?" And every single day they are told by the same kid how weird it is that they do. Now imagine being one of those mums and watching this unfold. You're feeling rattled and anxious, but needing to stay calm so that you can help this child to understand there are lots of different kinds of families. It's hard, right? These stories draw on just some of the experiences shared with me by LGBTQ+ parents and caregivers about navigating schools as a rainbow family. Underpinning each of these stories is an assumption that all kids live in mum-dad families. When lots of us think of family, we think mum plus dad plus kids. This isn't our fault. We're shown this idea all the time in books, on TV, in images we see in the media. We might even have this idea from our own life experiences. But most of us know of families that don't look this way. Have a think. Who do you know that doesn't fit this mum-dad model? They might be families with 2 mums, 2 dads, or perhaps they have more than 2 parents. Maybe they're families with grandparents, aunties, or uncles as caregivers, foster families, step or sole parent families, and there are so many more. One study of 10,000 Australian children found that more than 40% of kids had, at some stage in their lives, lived in a family environment that the researchers described as non-traditional or complex. That is, a living environment that is not just biological mum, dad, and kids. More than 40%. That is almost half the kids surveyed. What if we were to evolve our everyday understanding to include the rich diversity of families that live and love in our society? I've been researching the experiences of LGBTQ+ people in schools for more than 7 years now. What I've found in my research with parents is that assumptions about children living in mum-dad families are not uncommon, even though there are lots of different kinds of families navigating these spaces. I can tell you a lot of other stories from my research. Ultimately, it comes down to this. When all families are assumed to have a mum-dad structure, we forget about families that don't look this way. And this creates a space where some parents and children have to do a lot of work to feel seen and understood. It also can really impact on a sense of belonging. And don't we want all children and families to feel that they belong? Although my research primarily focused on gender and sexuality diverse parents and caregivers in school settings, those I spoke with also shared stories about their everyday lives. As a queer parent of a young toddler, I really resonate with some of these stories. You see, my family has also been impacted by mum-dad assumptions. I've lost count of the number of times we've been stopped in the shops because our curious and inquisitive bub loves waving at people. It's really sweet. And when people stop to say hello, they often use the name Dad to describe my partner in their chats with our bub. "Oh, you're out on a shopping date with your daddy, how fun." "Oh, are you being good for your dad?" I thought Dad would pick you up eventually. You were in the trolley before. They do this because to the outside world, my partner looks like what people perceive is a dad. My partner has a beard and is masculine presenting. They are also non-binary, trans, and they provided the egg for our bub. I had the absolute privilege of growing and giving birth to our little one. When people call me mum, I feel a sense of joy because that is who I am. I'm proud to be a mum. When people call my partner dad, it's jarring because they don't identify as dad. So we are not a mum-dad family. We are a mum and Moddy family. Moddy, spelled M-O-D-D-Y, is my partner's parent name. Even our cat knows them as Moddy. Moddy is kind of a combination of mum and dad. It's common for rainbow families to choose their own parent names. Some use a form of mum-dad label and some don't. Someone I know has a name that means love. So in our family, we say things like, "Do you want to go to the shops with Moddy?" "Oh, Moddy, stop snoring so loudly." Your Moddy loves you to the moon and back. So when Moddy is called dad, it hurts because it means our family is not seen or understood. It takes us out of beautiful moments because it's a kick to the heart every time we hear it. And when we let people know Moddy's parent name, we often get confused looks, or it's completely ignored, or it's brushed over in discomfort. Sometimes in these moments, I become small and I shrink into the ground. Sometimes it's like being inside a glass cube, looking out, banging on the walls, and no one can hear. As a parent within a rainbow family, I often find myself wondering what it will be like for our bub growing up in a world that keeps calling his parents mum and dad. I wonder what he'll learn about the value of his own family in these moments. I wonder what he'll learn about what his family should be. Most of us want to be inclusive, but sometimes it can be hard to know how. So here's some places we can start. We can notice our assumptions and reset the ways we think about family. What kinds of assumptions do you commonly make? And how can you begin to challenge them? Take time to learn people's parent names. It's as simple as asking, what does your child call you, instead of assuming it's mum or dad? And if asking about names doesn't seem appropriate in the situation, we can just take the approach of not assuming. So instead of saying something like, "Are you having fun shopping with mummy?" we can just say, "Are you having fun shopping?" We can help kids to understand there are lots of different kinds of loving families by reading books. Books with two mums, two dads, and gender diverse parents. We can read stories that feature sole parent families, grandparent families, or families that have lots of special adults. And what about changing up the characters in oral stories like the Three Bears to represent a range of structures? There are shows we can watch that have this diversity too. Peppa Pig recently had an episode with two mums in it. And we can have conversations with kids to help them understand there are lots of different kinds of families and they're all special. When we come together to shift our thinking from assuming mums and dads, we have the opportunity to see families as they are. We also reduce the work it takes those families to feel seen and understood. And we help all families to feel valued. There are also things that schools and other education contexts can do to ensure that all families are included. In fact, things are already being done successfully in many education settings. Some settings are using inclusive language, such as parents and caregivers, instead of mums and dads. They ask parents and guardians what their children call them, and then they use those names. They also say things like, "Tell your big people," instead of "Tell your mums and dads." A diverse range of families are represented in some schools and education spaces. Whether through books, everyday classroom talk, or in other ways, this helps young people to understand there are lots of different kinds of families. It also helps children in diverse families to feel a sense of belonging. Some spaces are expanding their ideas around Mother's Day and Father's Day and negotiating creative local solutions. They are also rethinking events that are based around a particular gender or family relationship. These settings think about the way they do things so that every family is included and feels welcome. And isn't that good for all kids? When some people hear about these kinds of approaches, they think that it devalues mum-dad families. Actually, these kinds of approaches value mums and dads and all kinds of families so that all young people feel valued and that they are welcome. When we incorporate these ideas into children's care and education from a young age, we have the potential to start breaking down barriers of what it means to be a family. Recognising that families are more than mums and dads is essential to creating an inclusive society for all families. It's hard not to want to be a part of that, right? My hope for my rainbow family is that by the time our bub grows older, there is greater recognition of family diversity in every education setting and in broader society. My hope for the children in rainbow and other diverse families everywhere is that this can happen now. Let's create a world where we assume that families are different, unique, and special. Let's create a world where all children and families feel welcome in schools. Let's create a world where every family is celebrated.